right, welcome everybody. How are we doing? I need more noise than that because I'm a coach and I'm used to like excitement. All right, let's get pumped up. All right, welcome to Journeys in D&I Leadership. My name is Carissa Swaggart. I use the pronoun she, her, hers. I'm from Boston. I'm an avid Boston sports fan. I don't really pronounce my A's a lot and I talk fast. So hopefully you're going to understand me, but welcome, this beautiful audience. I get a little emotional with this because in 2019, I was in a role at a company that I was at for 13 years, and I didn't feel satisfied, right? I didn't feel like I was doing anything that my daughter would be proud of, my wife would be proud of, my parents would be proud of. And I wondered, what is it that I want to do, right? How can I help people? How can I make a difference? How many of you in the audience, with a show of hands, have felt like that, or in the chat? Could have been in the past, could be right now, what brought you into this room, right? So I stand here now, 4 years later, as the leader of diversity, equity, and inclusion for that same company that I didn't think it was possible to have a role like this. I work my butt off. I help people understand the value of diversity. And I'm very grateful and privileged for this opportunity I have to help change lives, not only in my company, but also outside with our partners. So I'm excited to work with these two co-panelists to share our journeys and our perspectives of what it means to be in D&I. So I'm gonna ask you all, there's this thing where there's a lot of people that wanna be in DI. They wanna be in social impact, they wanna be in ESG, right? Corporate social responsibility. And we see this because more and more companies are saying we need those roles. In fact, LinkedIn did a study from 2015 to 2020, and they said that there was an increase in people with the title head of D&I up to 117% in that 5-year period, which is crazy. So there is a need for us in what we do. Okay, whether that is we volunteer, whether that's an ally, or we have this full-time role. So in the next hour, or maybe a little less, what we're hoping to do is provide perspectives of our journeys, from active allyship, from full-time D&I leaders, or supporting ERGs and resource groups. We also hope that what you take away from this are some tools and resources to take back to your organizations and continue to focus on building an inclusive culture. And then if you're an ERG leader, BRG leader, you can understand, what is my next step? Is it at the company that I'm at? Is there a future for me somewhere else? If you are a D&I leader like myself, what are gonna be the tools and practices that maybe we could share with each other? We don't know it all, right? I learned a lot in the last day and a half. How can we learn from you? We're gonna ask you and engage with you and ask you, what is your perspectives? What have you learned? What's your journey like? Does that sound good? Yeah. Are we ready? And I'm under time. That's amazing. All right, so I'm actually gonna turn it over to, and I have to say, actually, before I do, the crazy thing is that I met Alexandra a year ago, virtual summit out in Equal. We've never met in person until today. But hopefully what you all see today is this chemistry between the three of us. And Nate, same thing. Alexandra introduced me to Nate virtually with this idea of, could the three of us come together and do something that could help others understand the journeys that we've gone through? So this is the power of Out and Equal right there. So I just wanted to share that as I introduce and welcome Alexandra up.
Am I keeping this? Okay. All right. Oh, this is on. Perfect. So thank you so much for the introduction. And you were saying earlier that you feel like you've known us for 37 years. I hope that's a good thing. We've talked a lot in preparing the session for you today, but a lot of the session is going to be really interactive. We're going to ask you to talk to your neighbors. We're going to ask you to share stories. So I hope that you have come with the willingness and the openness to share your stories with us as well, because like C said, we're gonna learn from you. So I wanna get a quick temperature check from everybody in the room. And I want to know, I wanted to just know from all of you here a couple of things. So if you can stand, or if you'd like to show your hands, or if you'd like to share in the chat if you're watching us virtually, please let us know how you're engaging in DEI. Can I? Yes. It's the beauty of working with somebody. Thank you. So take a look at your handout, but what I would like to know is, how are you working in DEI currently, or how are you engaging in diversity, equity, and inclusion? Stand up or show your hands if you have a full-time DEI dedicated role. Okay, cool. How many of you are in a part-time DEI focused role? Nice. And anybody here work with an employee network group, employee resource group, BRG? Lot of show of hands. That's really great, because that's where journeys start for a lot of people. And how many of you consider yourselves an active ally? Like maybe you're not in an ERG, but you are an active ally. Nice. All right. And then are people talking in the chat? Do we want to? Yeah? Yeah. Cool. So for anybody who is watching us virtually, wherever you are in the world, please feel free to put in your questions and answer as we go along. Great. So what we actually want you to do now is take that into consideration of where you are now and where you would like to be and why you're here, because you probably have a reason of why you decided to show up to this session and spend your time with us three. And it's not just because we're very cool. But what I'd like you to do is to take a moment to look at the handout and answer some of these questions. So ask yourselves or write down how you got here and where you'd like to take your focus on DEI. Like, what would you like your next step to be? And then also think about what skills or what things you might need in order to get there. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Go ahead and write it out. And for anybody who is watching virtually, you can also download the same handout in the Pathable app. So you just go to Files and you click Download. Good. You want some more time, or would you like to start? Wow, I like an eager audience. Cool. So this is your show. So would anybody like to share anything that they've written down? Cool. Right over here.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alyssa, and something that I'm hoping to learn and get out of this session and just as I go forward is how to be a better ally and leader to enact change for communities that I may not ID as, people of color, just transgender folks, like people that I don't necessarily ID with, but how I can still be super supportive and kind of help best support them and enact change.
Thank you. And we have another person here. I forgot to have them share with each other. Oops. Like the next question.
Hi, my name's Terry. I want to be the first non-binary, queer, differently abled Chief Diversity Officer for a global organization.
Well, I really commend both of you for sharing that with us, because it is difficult, and one of the things I'll talk about in a second is how awkward it was for me to bring my ambitions up to the person that was going to support me. So on that note, what I would like to ask all of you is turn to the person next to you and maybe share a little bit more about what you've written out, because I understand that it's not easy to stand up in front of an audience and share that with everybody in the room. So if you want to take just 2 or 3 minutes to discuss amongst yourselves, introduce yourselves, enjoy the networking. All right, so I'm going to give you about 5 seconds. I'd like you to come back here. All right, so as you're settling down, I loved seeing the interaction in the room. How many of you met somebody new just now? Super nice. Okay, I got 2 people laughing because clearly they know each other. How many people found that they have some similar interests or aspirations to the person next to you? Really nice. Well, I want you to hold on to that, because I think we're all here for a reason, and I'm sure that some of the connections you make today are going to be part of what supports your journey wherever you want to take it going forward. I do want to just open up real quick because we have a couple of people who've mentioned something in the chat. Andy's going to need one more second, so while we give Andy another second to pick out somebody from the chat, would anybody like to share one more thought before we continue? I see a hand here. Can we get a mic? Christine's going to come up.
Hi, Richard Spadali from Capital Group.
Can you speak? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Richard Spadali from Capital Group. Thanks everybody on the panel. So we were just discussing, the notion of maybe, pushing HRC to raise the bar for the 100 score, which I know they already are, but to be requiring companies to prove they have openly LGBTQ members of senior leadership in order to achieve that 100 score. Because right now they don't. And also like members of board of directors as well. So that's something on our horizon.
All right.
Hey, so yeah, can you hear me? Yep, cool. So we have one here from Holly, right, who's a global team liaison for her Pride board. And where she wants to see her focus go is to go basically as far as you can, because she wants to make this her life's work, which is really good. And I just want to give a shout out to Evan as well, who is a newly appointed president of the company's ERG, and wants to be able to create a really solid foundation that they know they can pass down.
Very nice. So what I'm gathering from everybody is that we're all in different parts of our journeys. Some of us are just starting out. Some of you hold DEI dedicated roles, and some people want to push the bar for even the standards with which we measure how inclusive a company can be. And that's really wonderful because as you're going to hear now, there are so many different ways that you can take this, this journey into DEI. And what we're going to do now is we're going to transition to share a little bit about each of us, how we got to where we are, and some of the things that we would have liked to know prior to having started in these different roles. So to continue, I'm gonna give you a quick background of my story, and I haven't introduced myself properly yet. My name is Alexandra Sims. I work at Oracle, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. So come on in, come on. So I have always been committed to DEI. But after I moved into corporate sales and marketing role, I basically thought that was over for me and that I couldn't work in DEI unless, this misconception that I had, that unless I had studied HR, or if I worked in HR, if I had studied admin, or if I held a DEI dedicated role. Or maybe, maybe I was going to have to go back to my work in nonprofits. But I essentially thought that I just couldn't go back. And recently, just a little while ago, I found that I didn't necessarily have to give up my day job in order to make a difference in diversity, equity, and inclusion in many different ways. And I'd like to share with you how I got to where I'm at today. So, in my day job, I help individuals and teams create new and innovative ways to establish more meaningful connections with customers. My day job is I am a customer engagement strategy manager. It's a mouthful, but essentially what I do is I help the sales and marketing teams establish new ways of creating those meaningful conversations with customers. And then aside from that, I also lead the communications for our Pride Employee Resource Group at Oracle called Open. And recently, I found a way to mesh both of those roles. So to backtrack a little bit, you can hear me now. I speak English like a native speaker, but I was actually born in Spain. So my father is Spanish, and I was born in Spain long time ago now. And I used to not be able to say that, and now I'm realizing that now I can say that, yeah. But my mom's also American, so I had that extra little bit of spice. And growing up in a multi-ethnic household, also having lived on both sides of the pond, and traveling a lot as a kid just to visit family back and forth, what that allowed me to see is how many different diverse points of view and different people can be, and how wonderful that is. I gained that perspective at a very young age, and then on top of that, as I grew older, I began establishing friendships and meeting coworkers and learning about my family who are all across the different walks of life and the queer spectrum. So it was easy to get involved within DEI. But like I said before, I left that behind when I went into a corporate tech company. So I basically stopped working in nonprofits, and then I thought, okay, well, that's it. And I've sold my soul. What happened after that was shortly after joining Oracle 5 years ago, I had a really unhealthy situation with somebody at my work. And what that led me to do was to create my own grassroots campaign to promote inclusivity and belonging for anybody, no matter what your background or what your perspective of diversity was. The campaign spanned across different industries, different companies, and different geographies. And once that ended, I continued talking to the people from the Pride ERG. And that's kind of where my journey with Oracle's Pride ERG started. So I kept in contact with them, and about 1.5 years ago, I joined as the communications lead, like I mentioned earlier. And that's pretty much where my journey here started. So through this ERG role, I got so many opportunities to meet my colleagues from different lines of business, from different geographies. And one of the coolest experiences I've had to date was attending the O&Equal virtual summit last year, where I met Carissa and Nate. And attending the conference, even though it was virtual, just literally fueled me with so many ideas of what I wanted to do. And I realized that some of those ideas were connected to my work within our Pride ERG, and some of those were actually more geared towards my day job. But like I said earlier, I wasn't really sure what to do with that because I had that misconception that there was no way I could blend those two. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to go into HR because I still like my day job. But I kept having that thought in the back of my head. And on what my director thought was going to be a regular career planning conversation, I threw in this wild card. And I went to him and I said, so, I went to that conference a couple of months ago, and I've been thinking, I don't really know where I want to take this, but I'd like to explore embedding DEI within our work and using it as a business conversation with customers. And my director, who's always been very supportive, but also challenging, smiled at me and he said, okay, well, if you can create a business case for it and it's solid, then maybe we can put a campaign behind it and pilot it with our sales teams. So you have to remember that at Oracle, we do have DEI dedicated solutions. Some of you use them for HR purposes, but I work in a different line of business, and nobody in my team had created this use case as DEI as a conversation starter with customers. Traditionally, we were talking about more things like story selling, using digital approaches, or industry-based ways to address customers. So this was rather new, and nobody in my team had done it before. But by February of last year, I was pitching this idea to our global VP of diversity and inclusion, and it came at a good time because for some reason she said, great, go for it, I give you my blessing. And then by April, we had a sales team of advocates who were willing to test this out with customers, and we had a campaign around why diversity and inclusion is good for business. So if I fast track to where I am now and why I'm here in front of you, what I guess I would like to share is that being open about what I wanted to do and not being afraid of telling my director what I came from today's or from last year's O&E session was really what spearheaded me here today. And I'm so incredibly thrilled at all of the things that I'm doing. It's really led to significant steps in my career. I get to do things now like work with our diversity and inclusion team for EMEA. We are contributing, my co-lead and I are contributing to the overall strategy for diversity and inclusion within our region. And we get to do really cool things like speak to customers in preparation for strategic deals or come to events like this. And that's not something that I thought I would have been able to do even a year ago. So there's a lot of exciting things that are happening right now. And speaking to you all today, I hope that if you are in a similar role or in a similar situation, that when you leave this conference and you think about the ideas that it sparked for you, that you take that with you, and that it gets you excited for what is to come. Because I know that my journey started just a little while ago, but I'm still very excited of everything that's to come. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to Carissa, and she will share a little bit about how she got here.
Thank you. I feel like everyone should have an ally like Alexandra, by the way. So, and that's what we need. So that's that allyship question, which you back there, I'm looking at you, great question. We need more of this. We need allies, right? So my journey at the start, I shared that story about 2019. So I'm in the alcohol space, specifically craft beer. And like a lot of industries in this country, and honestly globally, they were built for white cis men. And I have nothing against my white cis men. I love you all. I will hug you all after this, especially ones with beards. I have an affinity for that. But the thing is that for me, when I took the job into alcohol, my perception was, I gotta cover who I am, right? I can't tell people that I'm multiracial. They might think I'm Hispanic because that's all they know, or assume. I can't say that I'm bisexual because they're gonna have no idea what bisexual even means. And shoot, I get to sit in meetings where I'm gonna sell to strip clubs, and I have calendar girls, I'm going to accounts like Hooters and Twin Peaks. Oh wow, like I am, as a woman, I'm being degraded on a daily basis to sell product, right? So that was my intro into the beer world. And I thought, I'm gonna put my head down, I'm gonna be a guy's guy, I'm gonna do my job, I'm gonna work harder than the person next to me, and I'm gonna make a difference. And I did that for 13 years. I sold beer and cider across this entire country. This was my market in Vegas, so if you all want any haunts, let me know, because I know all of them. I know all the back doors of all the nightclubs and the casinos, which wasn't the greatest time of my life, but you know it was. But in that, when I got to 2019, I realized that I wasn't doing myself or anybody any justice, because I wasn't helping others who looked like me, or maybe others who didn't see the value in our company and actually have a voice. And so I was fortunate enough in 2019 when I was at this crossroads where I had a sponsor, and if you don't have a sponsor, get yourself a sponsor, because you're actually not gonna know who a sponsor is. A sponsor is someone, when you're in a room or when you're not in a room, they are speaking your name. So you need a coach and a mentor and a sponsor. I was lucky that I had a sponsor that mentioned my name in front of our executive team. And I got a phone call from our chief marketing officer, and she said, do you want to come to Boston and try marketing? I said, what? Like, I ain't that smart. I can sell the best, right? But I don't get the marketing thing. And she's like, take a chance. And I said, okay. So I moved back to Boston. I'm from Cape Cod originally, so it was great to be back home. And I realized the first day in our corporate office, there's no one that looks like me. Hell, there's no one that looks like anybody unless you're a white male in our corporate office. That was challenging, and that was my moment. And in that week, I actually challenged our CMO and said, I went back and I looked at all of our advertising for Sam Adams, which is one of our brands at Boston Beer. And not in one commercial was there a person of color. One commercial, and we've been around for 37 years, not one commercial person of color. And I said, we gotta do better, because as we all know in this room, the multicultural consumer, which is all of us, right, is growing in the United States, growing globally. So if we wanna be a world-class, innovative organization that sells the best-in-class products to our consumers, we have got to what? Be able to reach all of those consumers authentically. And so she looked at me, and I thought she was going to fire me, and she's like, okay, put a committee together. And I was like, just like that? She's like, yeah, just put a committee together. The wand. And we did. And we took 8 people, and we're 2,700 people at Boston Beer, 8 people across different various functions in our company. And for a year, we worked on a plan of what is diversity, equity, inclusion? What does that even mean? What does it mean for Boston Beer? And what are we going to go back to our executive team and say that we need to do? And at the end of that year, we sat in front of our executive team and senior leadership team and said, we have 2 things that we're going to tell you. 1, you need to hire a full-time person to do this role. The 8 of us can't do it and do our job. If you want to be serious, hire a full-time person. And 2, the 8 of us want to create a council made up of different levels throughout Boston Beer that will help support that leader. Unbeknownst to me, again, going back to sponsors, in the back there were my peers going, Carissa should do the job. Carissa didn't want the job. I didn't want the job. I'm telling you here now, I'm not qualified for the job because this job no one is qualified for because it evolves and changes every day. So my first piece of advice is get comfortable being uncomfortable. The second is lean on the experts around you, whether that is talent acquisition, whether that is learning and development, and that's what we did. So we created this council. We made a lot of noise. I kicked down a lot of doors. If you can't understand the passion I have by just listening to me right now, I kicked down a lot of doors. And that was great. But then I said, okay, so you want me to be a leader now in D&I. What does that mean? I want to be in a leadership position. I want to have power. We need a budget. And our leadership team gave that to me. And from there, it was a realization that I can no longer be an ally that kicks down doors. Because there is a difference when you are an ERG or a BRG leader. It is, you have to amplify those voices, right? But when you're actually leading this work, you have to bridge the gap between those who doubt what this work is about and those who want and demand change at a rapid pace. And if you're a for-profit, even a nonprofit, you have consumers. You have people that rely on you, so you have to understand their perspective as well. And so, yes, I'm an ally, but I am a business leader. This is a business. D&I is a business. And that has to be a part of the Boston Beer business, and that's how we've set this up at Boston Beer. And in that, I have to challenge myself and say to myself on a daily basis, I can't kick down doors anymore. What I can do is help others elevate their voice so then that we create this ripple where people are constantly asking these questions. So it's not just the D&I leader, it's every 2,700 person in my company is saying, hey, do we have resources for coworkers with disabilities? Do we have resources for coworkers right now who lost their right to have an adoption legally in this state? Do we have coworkers who are going to have support when their families and their right to marriage is gone? And that's what we're focused on right now. And that's the work that I'm proud of because you know what? I like being in the position I am in now because I can focus on that. And I feel like my superpower now is getting those who doubt the work we do to see the value in it. Because I take the time and say, you know what? I'm not going to agree with you probably 99% of the time, but I respect you. And that's how we accomplish the work that we're all trying to do. We have to find at least common ground to respect each other and then find a way to move through our differences. So where I sit today now, leading diversity, equity, inclusion for Boston Beer, we have 6 brands and growing. I'm proud to say we are the largest independently owned beverage beer company in the United States. We have a lot of work to do. I will be very transparent. We did not get a 100% score on the HRC, even though we tried. Last year was the first time we did it. But our team went back and we're riding that ship, and that will be our future. We're going to continue to look at the things that we are going to be successful at and look at the things that we're going to have to take a little bit more time with. But the biggest thing about that whole thing is that it is working in unison with our executive team, our board of directors. And for me, the most important part, I don't really honestly care about the leadership team. It's our middle level managers, and then it's the rest of our coworkers who might have came to Boston Beer and said, there is no one that looks like me. Yeah, there is now. Because hold on, change your eyes, turn around and look. There is, and it's growing, and it's going to get bigger. So that's the work that I'm doing now. That's the work that I'm proud of. But the biggest thing is that's my journey, right? Of like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I started this role. I still know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm passionate about it, and I just try to find ways to connect with people. So I'll turn it over to you now, Nate.
I'm going to stand up because I'm getting old. Getting creaky. Good afternoon. So, some of you may have seen me this morning in another panel. I'm Nate Parker. Pronouns are he, him, his. And gosh, I started this journey to DEI leadership 17 years ago when I joined JP Chase. I joined the company, and I think on the second day there, I was subscribed to our Pride network. And I think on my third day in the company, I was a leader. I haven't escaped yet, by the way. Before joining the company, I had no idea about diversity, equity, and inclusion, these words that we now use every single day. My background was in hotel and catering. My background was a bit of retail management. I even tried my hand at working in opticians until I literally fell into this job at the time at JP Morgan. And it very quickly became more than a job. So I started working in operations in our Bournemouth office. When I say I stamped faxes for 5 years, I literally stamped faxes for 5 years. There was job satisfaction, don't get me wrong. And some of you can probably relate to this. There was job satisfaction because I was doing a good job. But what I was really searching for and seeking out was personal fulfillment. And that came through pride. So over the course of my 5 years in operations, I had, as we've heard several times today, my day job and my gay job. And I just thought, wow, who wouldn't want to do my gay job full time? Of course, I had no idea that the reality of that and actually what is a DEI leader was quite a long distance away from my experience as a Pride leader. But through many conversations, through some difficult conversations as well, actually. I remember one year, about 2 or 3 years in, my manager turned around to me and said, you know what? If you applied half of the passion that you applied to Pride, imagine where you would be in your day job. And that was a reality check to me. I wasn't happy in my day job, so I threw myself into Pride, but I risked losing my day job. Because rather than actually taking action and rather than kind of exploring, I just threw myself into what I considered at the time to be, diversity leadership. So I really had to check myself, and I discovered and realized at that point that my power was in being really good at what I do, and then on top of that, driving the LGBT plus agenda. 2010, I had the wonderful opportunity to join our corporate diversity team. And talking of journeys, I joined a team of 6 people globally, just 6, dedicated to this agenda. And we were called corporate diversity. That's where we were on our journey. 4 years in, we had become diversity and inclusion, which was great. I think we're still about 8 or 9 people, and I do see some of them in the room today. And that was I was really shocked. I had this dream job, this is what I'd wanted to do. I wanted to be a DEI leader, and yet the landscape wasn't ready for what I truly wanted to do, which was to drive the LGBT plus agenda. I suddenly found myself in a situation, and to be honest with you, I found myself in a situation where everything that I loved about my Pride leadership role, I no longer had the ability to do, because it wasn't my agenda anymore. I was being really sort of pulled and swayed by the local legislations, the local regulatory requirements, doing PowerPoint decks and Excel spreadsheets, which I love now. But no one told me this is what diversity leadership was about. I was expecting it to be fun and networking and changing the world. And so about 4 years, I was like, why am I doing this? The very thing that I loved, the very thing that was my passion was Pride leadership. Don't get me wrong, it was an amazing, amazing experience, but there was a disconnect between what I thought and I wanted and actually the reality of having this amazing role. And I say that because so many people I talk to are like, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, whoa. First of all, hear what it is that I do. Understand what it means to be in this seat. So I took some time out. I went and explored the HR wilderness, as I call it. And I just thought, I'll go back to that, because I thought, this is in HR. Diversity at the time was in HR. I had no idea what HR did. So what I needed to be a successful DEI leader was to develop my HR skills. Went into HR, and then the start of last year, came back to diversity thinking, great, now I'm ready. So came back to diversity, which was now diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I was like, oh no, I'm still not happy. Like, I've gone out and I've discovered what HR does, and I've come back, and now diversity isn't even a part of HR. Diversity has been moved to the business. And I kept searching and searching and searching until this year, when I finally found what it was that I was looking for, which is a move to the Office of LGBT plus Affairs. It's not that role that you might think is like my nirvana, what I was searching for. What I actually realized is that I had always been a DEI leader the moment I took on that Pride leadership role. But what I realized actually is that what made me a DEI leader, and a successful one, is leveraging the skills that I use every day: data analytics, communication, networking, being able to tell a story, challenging people, building those bridges, the things I didn't think about because I was a BRG leader, and I was like, that's what it is. It's flags, fun, and food. But actually what I needed was to really leverage and empower and develop my business skills, because real change comes when you think of this as a business and you operate like a business. So what I learned was leverage your business skills, because they're going to put you in the best position, and recognize that all of you today are very likely to be DEI leaders because you're here with us. So I know I went about 60 seconds over. I got the look. So that's my story. Oh, the husband-to-be, if you noticed that, I'm 12 weeks away, which is why I looked. Yeah. Should have led with that. It's exhausting. So, it really is. Find me afterwards, I'll share. But we've got like 18 minutes left, which is plenty of time, because what we really want to do now is discuss. The greatest power from Out and Equal in my past has been the discussion points and leveraging and learning from one another, because as you've heard, our journeys and our perspectives are so very different, and we learn from one another every day, and it helps us formulate where we want to go. And if we think back, and I asked my colleagues to kind of summarize what they would want to share with you from their journeys, and Alexandra, it's you don't have to be a senior leader or be in a specific DEI role to make a difference. You don't have to be a DEI leader on paper. Be you, be a BRG leader, integrate DEI into your role, and just recognize your power. For C, so you are where you are because you put yourself there. And championing yourself will make you more capable of championing others. Again, like you said, turn around and see yourself. And as we heard in other sessions, be the role models that you're looking for if you don't find them there. And as I mentioned for mine, it's leveraging your key business skills. I'm a business and program manager buried in spreadsheets. Does that mean I'm not a DEI leader? No, I'm a DEI leader because I'm empowering and enabling others. So if we turn your attention back to your sheets, or if you're joining us virtually, take a look back at the sort of things you wrote. I want to pose a question to you before I get there, actually. Raise of hands, who of you realized you were a DEI leader before you came here?
Still not enough hands.
No. I'm like, wow. But you are, trust me. I wish somebody had told me that in my first summit in 2008. But you are already a DEI leader. You are taking your time to come to be with us today, to learn, to educate, to empower yourself. But turning back to your questions, has anybody's perspective changed? Have you suddenly thought, oh my gosh, no, don't want to do that? Or have you realized actually that exploring your BRG leadership role gives you that privilege and luxury of being able to find your sweet spot? Have a think for a second. What's changed? Have you suddenly realized there are skills you didn't even think you needed that actually are going to make you that top talent, that person who's going to take the mantle and drive this agenda forward in your organizations? So I think we've got some microphones, but would anybody like to share any comments, any kind of realizations, any myths that we've busted? Hey, Clark.
It's interesting. I had an aha moment here today. Hello, everyone. My name is Clark, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs. And so what I've heard really from a lot of your stories is that that position was not yet created. And you actually, because of your work speaking for itself, you were part of creating those positions. And so something I've always told myself throughout my career is act as if. what you want to be, act as if what you want to see, you may not currently have that position right now, but you can act as if you already are that. And oftentimes you might just have to create that and say, get out the way, I'm paving the way, because that blueprint doesn't exist yet, but I am the blueprint. So I think that's what I took away from that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Clark. I think this phrase, fake it till you make it, almost as well. I'm still doing that now. Thank you.
Hi. Lou Strickland from Bayer from Toronto. So what I didn't hear is you guys took a lot of night courses, and this is one of the things I feel insecure about. I'm a chemist by training, work in quality assurance, and spend a lot of time on D&I, and I feel, people ask me questions, and I'm thinking, well, I got that answer at a dinner party last week with a bunch of middle-aged lesbians or something, and I listen to podcasts and, get stuff off of TikTok and, ebooks and stuff, but to move into something full-time, I always feel like I need training of some kind on the D&I topic. I'd just like to hear what you have to say about that.
So I'll quickly add one thing, and it's a little confession, because quite often I walk into a room for campus students, and they're like, so what did you study at university? I never went to university. I left school when I was 18, finished my A-levels, but I was living on my own at that point. I couldn't afford to go to university, so I didn't. I've never taken any professional training. I've never taken any HR courses. I toyed with the idea, but I've never needed it. What makes me a DEI leader is my own lived experience that you can't learn in a textbook, and my ability and my desire to listen twice as much as I speak, to hear others, to advocate, and to be their ally. And that, to me, makes me the DEI leader. You can't learn that in a classroom. You learn that here, speaking to one another. The other thing as well is when I think about our business, we don't hire HR professionals. Like myself, I'm not a HR professional, even though I went and explored it. And our most recent hires have been from technology, from the business. Like your skills and your knowledge and your authentic self, that's all you need. So find the space if it's not where you are today. But yeah, you don't need to learn in a classroom.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, it was a similar thing that I faced, right? My degree was in sports management and coaching, so I was far away from even selling beer. I think there's a couple of things. So I talk a lot about learn, do, shine. So when we think about learn, part of this is to what Nate was saying, you learn from others. It's basic human decency, just listen to people, acknowledge those people, explore, and then you respond. And that's how we learn as human beings, right? So it is absorbing things around me. I did the same thing. It's TikTok, I try to push myself to be in other groups or find circle of friends that don't maybe look like me or don't maybe act like me. And to be honest, 99% of my friends are white males, straight white men. And so that was something that was eye-opening for me when I took this role. I'm over here preaching inclusivity and shit. My circle of friends are golfing with me on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we're all wearing the same polos and vests. Gotta figure that out, right? So I think there's part of that too. I think, so we learn from others. We have to, again, be uncomfortable being comfortable. And I think we do it. It's everyday practices. When I hear D&I leaders say, we're focusing on diversity, shit, no. You need to focus on inclusion first. Mm-hmm. Everyday behaviors is what makes diversity come and makes diversity stay. And so you have to find a way so that every day you're intentional of, what are my behaviors today? I have to say my pronouns every day. I have to be respectful of religious holidays that I might not understand. I have to understand those religious holidays and those needs for those coworkers. And then in time, you are gonna be, I get it, right? And you're always gonna have centers of excellence, like I mentioned that earlier. I am never gonna be able to own talent acquisition. We have a really amazing director of talent acquisition and diversity that she sets the stage for how we do diversity recruiting. I'm there to support her. That is her focus, that's her center of excellence. Mine is I'm a people person. Mine is I have to go out to all of our leaders that are hiring and say, here's why this is important. What is your perspective? What are your concerns? And then, by the way, there's that awesome strategy. Let's make it happen. So.
I did actually, I will say that I am a big nerd. So I do like to buff up on reading and books and podcasts. But yeah, I studied recreation, parks, and tourism. Like, I don't even know how I got into corporate tech.
That explains so much about you. No, go ahead, Sarah.
I see how she's known me for 37 years. So, no, but because I am a nerd and I do like, and I do feel a sense of being more comfortable in a room if I feel like I've read up on something. I did go out and I did seek reading. I sought small courses on LinkedIn, and just set myself up to make sure that I was kind of doing everything that I needed to do to, one, jump into business, which is why I work in the line of business that I do now. And then also in the DEI space, I did feel like I needed a little bit more, something to make me feel more confident. But at the end of the day, it was just to make me feel more confident, taking that first step into the room to talk to other people. I didn't really need that, because if I would have gone in and just spoken to people and, shut up and listened a little bit more, which I did, then that would have been enough. And one of the things that I really like to do is I love networking. My fire gets fueled just by talking to people and listening to other people's ideas. And the thing that I found the most is that if you want to know more about DEI, pretty much anybody will sit down and talk to you about how they can help you grow, what direction to point you in, or what their ideas are. That's a really wonderful field to work in. So if you go in with that feeling, that should honestly be enough, but I do understand that you may want to buff up a little bit, or maybe you're a nerd like me. So, there's stuff out there. We can talk about it afterwards if you want.
Yeah. We've got one question down here, and then, and then we'll come to virtual. So, yes. We got time. We buffered lots of time for discussion.
Right. So I work at a financial institution, and we have full support of our board of directors and our executive committee. Where we're lacking is the middle managers. So how do you get them motivated? Like, what do you do? They pay us lip service. It's like, yeah, we're behind you, but their actions don't always support that. So what do you do about that?
Yeah, you want me to?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the big challenge we have at Boston Beer right now. What's even more unique is that we're a beverage company. We manufacture, right? I mean, we have 3 breweries, actually 4 breweries across the country. And we're talking blue-collar workers who are 13 hours in a dungy brewery who are not wired, right? So they don't have that connection. And education-wise, there's a perception that, they maybe didn't go to college. And so with those middle-level managers there, we focus on the social economic side and job skills, on training job skills. And when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, that's how we focus it. So we change our narrative if it's my coworkers in the breweries, what is important to them. And what I say to the managers are, these are the workers that for 13 hours are on the floor. And safety is at risk if they're not trained properly, right? If they don't have the skills to be successful, if they don't feel heard, valued, and respected. Our production will go down. I mean, we can't have out of stocks with our product. And so I work with the middle level managers there to understand what are your objectives, and then how does work to make sure that we have an inclusive culture for those coworkers make you successful. So it goes back into that. Now, it's different for my sales organization, middle-level managers, because they just want to sell beer. Like, they say to me all the time, Kirsta, this is noise. And I'm like, who are you selling to? Right? Who are you selling to? And they're like, well, we want to sell to the multicultural consumer. And I said, do we have a sales force that can go into a bodega? Do you even know what a bodega is, by the way? Do you have a sales force that will go in to an account in El Paso, Texas? You don't. So it's important then, if you want to grow the business, if your outcome of your bonus is based on incremental distribution and volume, and you can't get into the accounts, that affects you. So this is why for you as a middle-level manager, this is important. So you gotta understand what their goals are, right? And then you take their goals, and then this is how D&I can support that. And the narrative might change based on the industry you're in and based on the business function within your organization, but that's it. And then I think the final thing, it goes back to leadership, because if the leadership isn't telling me that this is business imperative, as a middle-level manager, again, I'm focused on me and my little team. But if those leaders are cascading down, this is business priority. And then for me as a middle level manager, I understand for me to hit my goals, that I need to be an inclusive manager and leader. Then that equates to more retention, better job productivity, then I'm on board. But that takes time, right? We're not there at Boston Beer. I haven't solved that puzzle. That's my biggest focus right now is on our middle level managers. On how do we make sure this happens across 2,700 coworkers, which I'll be honest, are spread like this country. Half don't want to talk about woke corporate culture, and the other half want us to make public statements every hour. Did that answer it? Sorry, I just went on a tangent. It's another seminar tomorrow. No.
Yes, here, and then the virtual question afterwards.
Oh,
Nate,
can you hear me?
come on.
It's so weird to talk into a microphone. Anyway, hi, my name is Julie. I'm pronouns are she, her, hers. I work for Deloitte. My question is kind of for us young professionals here. I've only been with Deloitte for a year and a half. I've only actually been out as a bisexual woman for like 3 years. I'm fresh, I'm new. Thank you. This is my first summit. You know, this is my first like huge gay event in general, to be honest. I'm not plugged in yet with my local like ERG. So I guess my question is just, from the three of you who've, you know, this is not your first rodeo, what would be your biggest piece of advice for people like me?
Just from my perspective, and I'll keep it short, we need you to be you, loud and proud. Like, just thank you for sharing your story.
Yes.
Just be you. And shout and scream sometimes, but yeah, bring your authentic self every day because we just don't have enough you. So, yeah.
So I got started off with our ERG. Like I would just show up at an event and I would just help out here and there. So I would say if it's something that it's of interest of you and you want to do more of it, go to every opportunity you can. But it is, like all ERGs, these are volunteer positions, right? So you don't have to necessarily take on a role if you don't want to, but do show up and do attend and talk to your peers. And if your colleagues ask you about what you're doing at the ERG, talk about it, be vocal. But you know, get involved when you can, as much as you can, and what time permits. Like you do need to have your own life, and just because you want to go into DEI or you want to be more involved doesn't mean that you have to say no to everything else.
Yeah.
And I would just say your voice matters. To Nate's point, we have been lazy. At least I will say, like, I've been lazy. You know, when gay marriage was legalized, I was like, oh, we're good, right? We're good. Don't worry about this. And then now it's like, what did I do, right? Like, and I get this question all the time from a lot of allies, like what we can do, but other coworkers of mine in the LGBTQIA space, I'm like, what do we do, Carissa? Like you gotta vote, you gotta activism, you gotta get out there. Like all of this doesn't start at the White House, what's happening. It starts in our communities, locally. Get involved in politics because we need more of this room in politics. So do that.
So virtual, anything?
Nate.
Yeah, we got 1 minute
Nate,
left.
you've
but
been ignoring me.
Oh my. Let's just go, let's catch you afterwards because the virtual haven't been able to engage.
So we got
us.
1 minute. What is from Deirdre to Alexandra? What is the nature of the conversations you have with clients when you talk about D&I with customers?
Okay, cool. So, yeah, so those are very diverse. Wow, no pun intended. So they kind of depend. So usually it'll be maybe an account manager that wants to build a better connection with their client, and they have somebody who is going to be a decision maker in that deal, and they happen to be plugged into an ERG. So what we'll do is maybe we'll go in and we'll talk about best practices because ultimately it is something that all organizations care about. And it's something that, thankfully, at the company that I work at, we do care about as well. So we will have a conversation about what we're doing. We will share. We will learn. I will learn from them. My colleagues who actually work in D&I will also be a part of that conversation. And in other cases, we might just be talking about what some of the use cases can be for our technology. So it does depend, but a lot of times it's more connecting on that human factor, which might be of a personal interest to that person, before the account manager goes in and starts talking about product.
Thank you. Go on. Yes. You're going to just ask your question quick. If you need to leave, great, but we can take 2 more minutes just to answer this question.
Oh God, a lot of pressure. I've been holding this mic for like 10 minutes. I'm Dawn, she, hers. I work with Nate at Chase. And I was struck by something, Carissa, you were saying, but this is for anyone, before about passion moving to being in a leadership position. In my last role, during the Black Lives Matter, it was all, starting the BRG at our company was all passion and letter writing and fiery and yelling at leaders. And it didn't really work. I mean, I look at the company now and I think maybe we did start something, but I left and I joined JP Morgan to work directly on the corporate impact team. And it's my job to tell the story of what we're doing. And so my fire and passion is less needed internally because we literally have an office of LGBT plus and all these others. But speaking to the masses, especially from a financial institution, I was struck by your having to bridge the gap between the doubters and the people who are demanding change. And I think I've always surrounded myself with people who are demanding change. And so how did you develop those skills to like bridge the gap with people that you super don't agree with, but have to engage with?
Yeah, a lot of self-reflection, I'll tell you. I got to hold my tongue a lot, but I think part of it too was I spent a lot of time with communication coaches. So I would recommend, if you have the means to do it, get a communication coach, and that helped me with those who doubted the work. So to be successful, I had to understand of like how my body language was, how I reacted when they would say things that made me feel uncomfortable. And then I was going to every conversation with curious, not furious. Like, because before that I was going to the conversation going, they're questioning that, they're furious and I'm furious. Every conversation I have, that's the first thing that I say in my head before I walk into it. I gotta remember, on both sides, curious, not furious. And it's my biggest priority is to get that other side. And I don't want to say other side, but I spend more time with those coworkers that don't see the value in this than I do the coworkers that do, because I honestly want to understand why they don't, right? And I think it's communication, it's recognizing that I got to hold some things back, and recognizing at times my values are at jeopardy, and my integrity is at jeopardy, and that's part of being uncomfortable. There are times where I'm like, I want to bitch slap that person, but I can't, right? And so I think sorry, I'm swearing.
That's
okay.
Good.
She's like my guiding light. But I think it's a combination of that. I think if there's any resources around communicating, respectful communication, there's a lot of great resources on that. And then just being self-aware of where you come from, your background, and just being open to other people's opinions and thoughts.
So thank you all for staying. Your questions, I'm staying an extra couple of minutes. We're happy to hang behind if you want to come and ask other questions. Find us on LinkedIn, on the Passport app, but thank you for making today's session possible.